Right, we look like we've got quite a number of participants joining. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy 1st of February. This is a webinar regarding creating places for science. It's an extremely topical subject. There's an awful lot of conversation generally going on at the moment between with real estate providers, landlords, occupiers around what looks like great science space at the moment, and we're blessed in Cambridge obviously to have a huge amount of fantastic locations. On the webinar today, we've got some really great people who really understand their subject matter. We've got John Sommerville from Creative Places, who's well known to a lot of people in Cambridge. John is the managing partner of Creative Places. He's a real estate advisor. It's a business that's been specifically set up to advise clients on developing and investing in commercial space, focused specifically on R&D facilities. The practice has worked with a number of clients, including 7 of the UK's top universities, including Cambridge, and 3/4 of the UK's major hospitals. John and his team have advised on Babraham Biosciences and their research campus evolution, and also with Cambridge Medipark and the partners in terms of the development of the next phase of the Cambridge Biomedical Campus. John's been in Cambridge, as a lot of you will know, for over 25 years, and he's very much looking forward to seeing everybody when lockdown finishes. Doug Cuff, again, a number of you will know him from his time at Biomed Realty. He is currently the Vice President of the UK Real Estate for IQHQ. He's spent over 20 years working in the real estate sector, specifically in life sciences. Prior to IQHQ, as I mentioned, Doug has been working with Biomed Realty. He was responsible for overseeing 1 million square feet of life science real estate portfolio in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Doug then moved across to see the completion and operation of the Centre of Life Science in Boston, which is an 18-storey first-class R&D facility and houses major research groups such as the Children's Hospital in Boston, the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Centre, and the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Doug did spend some time in Cambridge in 2012 and was involved in the acquisition of Granta Park. He also expanded the UK portfolio there by negotiating 2 build-to-suits at Granta Park, along with closing out a partnership with the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, BBSRC for short. Doug has an MBA in Business Administration from the University in Boston and a BSc in Biological Sciences from the Fordham University in New York City. So without any further ado, and we've got a great list, 127 attendees so far, over to John to kick off his presentation, which will then be followed by Doug. Just to say, if you have got questions during the course of this webinar, then please, by all means, use the chat function on Zoom, and we'll basically deal with questions towards the end of this presentation. But we're ready when you are, John.
Thanks, Alison, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to sort of do the first introductory talk of the session today, really just wanting to touch on what we're seeing as some of the drivers of demand for R&D real estate across the world, but particularly with a context of Cambridge. Then to talk about what that's meaning in terms of demand for floor space in our city, and to touch on a couple of the developments that are taking place in terms of innovation districts. So the first trend that I wanted to talk about, and one that's really having a major impact on the choices that R&D businesses are making in terms of their locations, is around open innovation. And this is a concept that an American academic, Henry Chesbrough, developed in observing the way that major R&D businesses were choosing where to locate their facilities and how they were undertaking R&D. If you could all just make sure you're on mute. because I'm getting a bit of background sound. So this is, the slide is showing you the way that businesses were undertaking R&D. So they were effectively taking the science and technology base, the research side, and they were developing products and services themselves through this innovation funnel to then get to their target market. And it was very much then around having secure, sometimes remote sites on which their own people were working on developing products and services and coming up with new ideas. And what Chesborough observed was that companies were moving to more of an open innovation model, where you can see that they were then building on their own internal technology base and taking on ideas from others. And then through the innovation process were generating revenue from some of the ideas part of the way through the process by licensing them out or spinning out companies or entering into joint ventures, and broadening the range of the potential target markets for their innovation. So they were looking to develop products and services more efficiently, more speedily, and with better outcomes. And this is having a major impact on where companies then choose to locate. They're very much wanting to be in locations where there is a broad range of partners with which they can collaborate, where they can draw on a wider range of initial research, and where they can find partners across different sectors to then use the technology that they develop in a number of different ways. And so we're seeing really strong growth in demand for those locations in the world where there is a good breadth and depth of sector expertise and research expertise, and where businesses can find they can partner with a number of companies as well as really strong universities and research institutions. And here in Cambridge, AstraZeneca is a really good example of open innovation in practice and how they moved from their secure site up in Audley Park on the edge of Manchester to choose to be in a location where they were right amongst some leading research and clinical institutions, as well as businesses that they could then partner with. And you can see in the text at the bottom that they have already built a number of collaborations with people like the MRC, with their Laboratory of Molecular Biology, which you can see on the left-hand side of this image, and with Cancer Research UK and Cambridge University, as well as with businesses that are located in the city. Second trend that we've seen is the way that businesses are diversifying their R&D activity and moving into novel sectors. So 3 examples here of that in practice. Verily is an organization that Google's parent company Alphabet set up and is taking some of the technologies that Google had developed and applying that into healthcare applications. Microsoft, who've had a facility in Cambridge for a number of years, have been partnering with Adam Brooks Hospital to again use their technology into healthcare delivery. And Samsung, who we would associate with TVs and fridges and the like, they've established their artificial intelligence center over the road from Microsoft in Station Road, and employed Professor Andrew Blake, who was formerly the head of Microsoft's Cambridge Research Lab, to really take that facility forward. And we're seeing a lot of growth in the way that different sectors are coming together, data science, artificial intelligence, medical technologies, coming together to find novel applications. So again, if you're a company that's in a location where there is really good strength across a number of different sectors, it opens up more opportunities for you to use the technologies that you've developed to apply them to novel areas. Just on this third area, the third trend that we're seeing is the growth in what's called innovation districts. So location of R&D in more urban locations rather than on more sort of rural or edge of city science parks. And the graphic is showing some outputs from research that we jointly commissioned with Bidwell's. It was undertaken by YouGov, who interviewed senior R&D personnel in 50 of the EU's top R&D spenders. And you can see that their #1 choice in terms of locations was now a city district location. And that's why we're seeing places like King's Cross down in London, and the Station Road area in Cambridge really coming to the fore in terms of these technology businesses, enabling them to have better access to other amenities that their staff can enjoy. It's easier for their staff to get into work, and where there is then an easier way that they can collaborate with others. And from the same survey, we asked them to rank their hierarchy of facilities that were important to them. And you can see really strikingly that public transport hubs was the #1 choice, enabling them, as I say, to get people in and staff in to be able to recruit and retain the best people, and be able to partner with others. And when we looked at the top considerations for location decisions, alongside that ease of recruiting and retaining staff, it was really important to them to have good data connectivity. And you can see within the range of the way that data science is coming to the fore in a number of these different areas, that's important. But also particularly that there's availability of property to grow their activity. So they're wanting to be in locations where they know if they want to grow and grow quickly, that there is opportunity for, in terms of real estate delivery, for them to be able to do that. And just building on that, we did some work with MedCity back in 2016, looking at the demand for healthcare R&D premises in London. And these were the results from that survey, asking businesses where they wanted to be, different location types. And you can see that locations close to or on hospital sites and close to academic research sites were seen as really important for those healthcare R&D businesses to be able to best partner with those organisations. Final trend I wanted to touch on was about company funding, and what we've seen through 2020, despite or perhaps because of the pandemic, is a record year in terms of funding for healthcare R&D activity. This is information from CB Insight's recent State of Healthcare report, and you can see that 2020 exceeded previous years with over 80 billion of new funding into companies from a variety of sources. Looking across the world, you can see how this is quarter by quarter in recent years, how Asia in particular has seen significant growth in 2020, but there's been growth in North America and Europe as well, as companies, as investors, sorry, are looking to understand how they can get involved in R&D and seeing the benefits of healthcare R&D in particular. And just looking at some other sectors, artificial intelligence in healthcare is similarly seeing a significant growth in funding as these range of sectors start to come together to deliver better outcomes. And when we look at Cambridge, here's a few examples of companies that have recently raised money. Therapeutic companies in drug discovery, such as Wring Therapeutics and BitBio based down at Babraham. Riverlane, which is a quantum computing software company, and also Kymab being acquired by Sanofi to become Cambridge's 20th billion valuation company. What does that mean in terms of demand for floor space? Well, this graph shows you the registered requirements with Bidwell's over the last 15 years or so, looking at office space in blue and laboratory space in orange. You can see that the trend line in both cases is for rising demand. Obviously quite a steep rise in demand in 13, 14 and 15 for office space, which has tailed off a bit, but which is in terms of demand registered is still maintained despite the pandemic at good levels. And for laboratory space, 2020 saw an increase in the number of registered requirements. And overall, we're seeing, when you look at the average requirements in the first 8 years of this table and the last 8 years, that there is quite significant growth in the need for floor space for laboratories in the Cambridge market. And when you put in the context that at the moment there's recorded only around 80,000 square feet of available laboratory space, you can see that there is a real need to continue to deliver this type of space in the city. So I just wanted to touch on two innovation districts that have been under development and are emerging in the city and are making quite a difference in terms of Cambridge's offer to R&D activity. So this is a shot from the south side of, view from the south, looking towards Adam Brooks Hospital and Cancer Research UK's facility, as well as Long Road Sixth Form College, and with the Cambridge Mainline Railway running down the left-hand side. So this was a photograph that was taken in 2008, when the land had just been released from the Greenbelt and planning consent was secured. And when we look forward to 2019, we see quite a transformation in that location, as those familiar with Cambridge would have seen. So we've seen the MRC's Laboratory of Molecular Biology, the so-called Nobel Prize factory, being constructed and built and opened in around 2010. AstraZeneca's new main R&D facility, which we hope will open this year, being built alongside some further land that they have and are securing planning consent to expand on. New Papworth Hospital, and alongside of which there is now a Heart and Lung Research Institute, which is under construction. Land that Cambridge University have acquired for research facilities, and a new building for ABCAM, which was opened in about 2018. And just looking at the remaining land under development, Adam Brooks control quite a lot of the land now and have plans for a new children's hospital and a sort of redevelopment of some of the space that they've got on their old 1960s campus, a project they're calling Adam Brooks 3. And on the second phase of the site, we have consent, or there is consent for around 500,000 square feet of further commercial R&D activity alongside more land for clinical activity. And the next building that is due to come through is this one. It's called 1000 Discovery Drive, which secured a resolution to grant planning permission about 10 days ago. It'll comprise around 100,000 square feet of laboratory and office accommodation over 5 stories, and it's hoped that construction of that building will start later this year. The second innovation district that I wanted to touch on is West Cambridge, a somewhat outdated image, this time from roughly the centre of Cambridge looking to the west. So you've got the M11 motorway in the distance, and Cambridge University's land holding here, which comprised at the time predominantly academic departments, including the vet school, the old Cavendish laboratory, the computer laboratory on this side of Cambridge. And the university is in the process of securing consent for around 4 million square feet of additional development, partly to create more academic space and partly so that it can create space for commercial R&D partners to sit alongside these world-leading academic departments and further the collaboration between business and academia. And the university is already under construction on its new Cavendish laboratory and shared facilities hub, and has appointed a design team to progress the design for 3 new buildings for commercial R&D, 2 on this western side, and an innovation centre alongside some existing commercial space. So we're seeing in Cambridge some significant new developments that will come through and meet some of the demand that's coming through for commercial R&D. That draws me to an end for my initial presentation. So Alison, I don't know whether we want to move straight through to Doug.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, but I think if we move straight on, thanks ever so much, John. That was really informative. Doug, if we could get going with yours, which is a slightly different format. Fingers crossed it'll load up okay.
Fingers crossed. Here we
go. At the end.
Can you see this? Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
It's a big. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's I think I know a good portion of the group. I'm really excited to kind of re-engage with everyone and talk to everyone and kind of talk about the new venture and kind of talk about give you a very. It's going to be a very fast tour of our 4 million square feet that we have under development today. So this was a presentation that was done, I can't take credit for it. It was done for our last capital raise, which we raised 1.7 billion. So it clearly worked and impressed some people, which is good news. So this is the team. I think a lot of people will recognize a lot of people on this team. Get that out of the way. Tracy Murphy is our president. She used to run the West Coast for Biomed Realty. John Bonanno was the chief for Biomed. He was a VP of Leasing and Development. And when I was at Granta, I reported directly to John. Alan Gold is our chairman currently, and he was the founder of Alexandria, which is the largest life science developer. They have about 38 million square feet over the US and Canada. And then Steve Rosetta is our CEO, and Steve was, we kind of developed a good working relationship with him when he was working for Cushman & Wakefield and represented Illumina, and actually was sat across the table from us when we did the deal at Granta Park with Illumina. So that's kind of the team. We've been together now for about 18 months. Our total capital raise is 2.4 billion. We have projects in San Francisco, San Diego, Boston, Cambridge, and the last leg of the stool is Cambridge. Also, we're also looking at Oxford and London, but we think hopefully Cambridge will be our first step into the market. Here's our portfolio here. Kind of our trophy pieces is the RAD, which stands for Research and Development District in downtown San Diego, which we'll see later on, and then the Fenway Center, which sits directly across the street from Fenway Park in Boston, which I think for this forum will be particularly interesting because we're building 900,000 square feet speculatively over an 8-lane highway, which is really amazing. So if you talk about transit, what John kind of mentioned before, you'll see that Boston actually doesn't have that sophisticated a transit line. It has 4 lines. This is what it is, and the Fenway Center actually sits on top of the green line, which is right. You can see the yellow star. That's where that is. Right. So let's zoom in. Thank you for Google Earth into Boston. So Boston and the surrounding markets, there's about 30 million square feet of life science space, laboratory space that includes the suburbs. And our first real project was the Fenway Center, which sits right here, and it sits, you can see the star there. So it sits between 2 bridges, and we hope to start construction any day now, which we have to build a deck over the highway, and then build a car park, and then build the 2 buildings. It's 2 towers actually, and that's going to be about a 4-year build. Hang on, let me move to I've gone too far. Let me go back. I'll show you the CGI of the building. So if anyone's been to our website, you probably would have seen this. Hopefully it comes up. There it is. So basically now this here, so you have the train line on your right. That also is the Amtrak, which is goes from Boston to New York City. And then this is the kind of the artery that runs east to west through Massachusetts. And as you drive into Boston, this will be what you see. You can see it's 2 buildings. There's one in the foreground and one in the background. And on the 6th floor, there's an amenity deck, which we have a whole host of amenities from a bar that looks into the ballpark to a yoga studio, a sushi bar. We're still kind of programming it now. And then a mechanical floor up on 13. And then the high rise there. These 2 buildings are also part of the project. They're not ours. They're 2 residential towers. But these 2 buildings are ours right here. So this is the Back Bay neighborhood. This is a very famous Citgo sign. And you kind of look where it sits in relation. This is Kendall Square over here, and this is MIT's campus. So it sits quite nicely between MIT and the Longwood Medical area, which is here's downtown Boston, the Common, and this is kind of the financial districts back in here, and this is Back Bay there on your right. And then I think we pivot to look down at the Longwood Medical area, and this is the view of the building. So if you're on the 17th, 18th floor of the building, this will be your view. So you actually be able to see the entire ballpark during game day, which I think is pretty cool, pretty exciting. And then the next building that we acquired was right next door. It actually butts us. It's 109 Brookline, which has this parking lot here. And then these two buildings, it's actually two buildings, 109 Brookline, which is there, and then 2026 Overland Street there. Over the last year, we've worked to actually vacate 109 Brookline, which actually had two companies in. One was a software company called Toast, and they actually never occupied, so we just did a straight termination with them. And then the other group that's in there was our friends at Beth Israel Medical Deaconess Center. The same group that, same people that I used to deal with over at the Center for Life Science Boston, which is way out here in the background. So we have the decamp people out of there. We will now, we're going through the planning process to add more density here. That building now is 290 square feet total. This side is about 100,000 square feet, and we're gonna take it to about 14, 15 stories, and about 400,000 to 500,000 square feet. So really adding some serious density, and then actually adding underground parking underneath. So between the two buildings, we'll have over 1.4, 1.5 million square feet just in this neighborhood, which is really, really exciting. And we don't see any new, any stop for demand, which is again, I've been doing this for 20 years and I haven't seen the amount of capital going into the sector like we're seeing now. Here's more of an overhead view. Not the most attractive building. We actually did take off all the mechanical equipment on this deck here, and it's now a rooftop deck, which we're actually opening it up to the public. And then there is a footpath, cycle path that kind of goes from the back of the building down into Brookline, which is the neighborhood next door. You can kind of get a better view of how it sits. Here's Fenway, here's 109 Brookline, and we're trying to create an urban campus. Beth Israel Medical Deaconess owns this building here, and then there are rumors that they're going to actually dispose of that in the next 3 to 4 months. So we're in a prime position to pick that up as well. So stay tuned. But there's a lot of people that are going to be chasing it as well. Okay. So we'll pull back and then we'll go over to Cambridge. We're kind of sitting on the MIT campus. Over the summer, during the height of the pandemic, we actually acquired a 27-acre site in West Cambridge, which is at the end of the Red Line, which is known as the Brain Train because it goes through, it starts at Alewife, then goes down into Davis Square, which is where Tufts is, which is over here, and then goes into Harvard Square, and then into MIT and Kendall Square. But this site sits quite nicely, and it's actually the best located site in all of Alewife. We'll zoom in over here. So this is this area is known as Fresh Pond and Alewife. Alewife, that's our project there. That is the train stop there. And then this is where, over here is where all of the competition is. And so if you take the train to Alewife and you need to go to Fresh Pond, you need to walk across this bridge and to get there. It's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And a day like today, when we're gonna get 9 inches of snow, it's not the best commute. Our project is the train line, actually the platform actually sits beneath the star. And so we will have the closest site to the train, which for a commuter is probably the best case scenario. So the company that owns the site now, you can see the buildings here, is a group called GCP Technologies, and they actually make binding agents for concrete and for joining substrates for the construction industry. So really, you know, they're sitting on a gold mine of real estate without really realizing it. They've been there for over 50 years. And so they've had a change of leadership and then realized that they really shouldn't be in Cambridge, that they probably should be out in the suburbs. So we were able to grab this site kind of off market and begin to redevelop it. It is a controversial site because you can see that it sits around a lot of residential groups, which we think we're going to improve their quality of life, mainly by building nicer buildings. These are all single-story brick, old, tired buildings. This pond here is known as Jerry's Pond. It is contaminated. We're hoping to clean it up and give more public access to it, and really open up the campus for the general public, which is pretty exciting. GCP is in these buildings till the end of the year, which gives us time to go through planning, which we're doing right now. We've actually just submitted we had our first public consultation, so now we can actually share with you the what the buildings are going to look like and what we're trying to do, which is pretty exciting, which is here. So right now there's about 100,000 square feet on the campus. We're going to add another 6. So it's going to be about a 700,000 square foot project with a car park in the back. You really can see that, the low-rise buildings, 4 or 5 stories at the most, which is really good, efficient floor plates. We don't lose a lot of shaft space, so it works really well. We also don't want it to be dominating over the neighborhood. So we haven't changed any, we haven't gone for a variance. We haven't changed any of the planning. We hope it's not going to be a controversial project. It shouldn't be. And, we hope to get started, next January, this time next year. The next CGI is of the kind of the streetscape. So we want to add a bunch of retail to the ground floor, restaurants, bars, supermarkets, gyms, all the amenities. There's a very famous cycle path that goes actually from this site up through Arlington into Lexington and Concord. And if you are a history buff, particularly in the Revolutionary War, that actually is the site, the route that Paul Revere took when the British were coming. So we're actually going to activate that and use that as well. Cambridge, similar to Cambridge, England, actually is a very heavily cycled city. And so we're actually doing a lot, trying to steal a lot from what was done in Cambridge, England, and kind of incorporate it into this project as well, with a sizable bicycle park located on the campus. So that's our Massachusetts portfolio. Very quickly, we'll quickly zip over to San Francisco. We have one project that's currently in development now on Dubuque, and then last week we just closed on another project. I can show you where it is. I don't have any of the CGIs yet because we're still kind of in design. We like to highlight Kilroy and Biomed because our team are former employees of that, and we think these projects are actually better situated than those. So this is Dubuque right here. You can see this is the South San Francisco, not the BART, but it's the commuter rail that kind of runs through. And this is off the 15, or the 101, I'm sorry, the 15's on the other side. So this project we bought, sits right across on top of the train station. And it'll be about 300,000 to 400,000 square feet. We're looking to add more density. San Francisco is it? Hang on, we should be loading this. We're going to drill down into it. As we zoom down into the project itself, you can see how it is currently under construction. This building here is a Lowe's, which is like a B&Q for home goods. And then these 3 buildings back here, these are all warehouse kind of sheds that were converted into life sciences. And this is what we just acquired last week. And we look to probably knock those down and then build another life science campus here, and hopefully expand into this one to kind of pull all 3 projects together in a perfect world. We'll see if that works. But you can see where this sits, perfectly situated off the train line, off the highway, very easy access for all the employees there. Yeah, now we get right down onto the streetscape, and then the next slide will be the CGI, if I'm correct. Yes. And this is Perkins and Will design. So we're very, looking forward to get cracking on this, and then add something very similar to the other 3 parcels, other 3 buildings that I showed earlier. Now we'll pull out of San Francisco and we'll zip down the coast to San Diego. And this is kind of our iconic project located on the kind of Charlie train line in San Diego, and about 5 minutes from the airport. It is a bit of a groundbreaking project because most of the sector actually kind of sits up here by Torrey Pines and University Town Center, kind of up along the beach. And there's not much downtown. This is downtown San Diego here. And what ends up happening is that executives that fly in will then have to land and then take the the highway up, which could take you, it's not very far, but it could take you in the height of rush hour, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. While our project actually sits perfectly, with traffic, it's about 7 minutes from the airport and right downtown. And kind of building on what John was saying earlier, it actually, it's really close to urban living and apartment buildings and whatnot. It actually sits directly across the street from the USS Midway, which is an aircraft carrier. Now it's a museum. It was built post World War II, and the project actually has to incorporate a new headquarter building for the Navy, which has a very sizable presence in San Diego. To the north, you can see the airport. So it really is just one road down the water line here, which is pretty neat. This project is in 2 phases, about 1.4 million square feet. The original developer is a group called Manchester, and they needed when COVID hit and the office market fell apart, they needed a partner because he couldn't get his financing to build his office that he wanted to build. So we came in and then suggested life science, and he's able to build the Navy building, and then he's also building a hotel, which we think is very additive to our project. You can see this is the view from the Midway, directly across the street. Anyone that's seen Top Gun, the famous bar where Tom Cruise is singing, actually is right there when he sings the Everly Brothers song. And then you can see the trolleys right here as well. So it's very well connected, close to the airport. And we think and this is all downtown San Diego. So we think it's a very exciting project. And you can see this is us. We're actually on the ground moving today. So we're looking to deliver that in the next 18 to 24 months if things go the way they should. And then you'll see, this is the overhead of that project. So we're at 2A, 2B, 3A, 4A. This is the Navy building, and here's the hotel. So we get these 5 parcels that we're going to build. Phase 1 is 4B and 4A, and then phase 2 is these 3 buildings. And we actually have had so much demand and so much interest, we're actually contemplating building the whole thing out at once, which could be really exciting as well. And here's some to end. We'll give you a couple CGIs up to the quality that we're going to build to. These are the 5 buildings. This is the amenity center. That deck right there, we're hoping to put in a sushi bar, kind of overlooking the Midway, which would be pretty cool. And you can see it's very walkable to downtown San Diego. And this is the view from the water. And it's the only actual commercial space in San Diego that will have views of the water. It's because of the relationship with the Navy. So that's us in a nutshell from trying to build on what John was saying. I think if you look at what his takeaways, you can see that we're in the US, we're very positioned to do that, trying to build high quality buildings close to transit to attract that next kind of that workforce and access to talent. All of our projects, we believe, do that, and we look to do that, continue to do that as we expand our footprint.
That's really great, Doug. Thanks ever so much for that helicopter view of the US and your footprint that you're creating over there. That's superb. There's some questions that have come in. The first one, if I may, for John. Where do you see the sort of top 5 locations in terms of demand for life science space or science innovation space generally at the moment in the UK?
Well, I think we would see that the Golden Triangle, if I could call that 3 locations. So Oxford, Cambridge and London, we're definitely seeing companies wanting to locate to, and there are ecosystems that are supporting growth of companies that is then attracting investors in companies and investors in real estate. So a lot of the people that are now turning their attention to particularly the life sciences R&D sector are looking at Oxford, Cambridge and London. There's a lot of interest in those locations. Sort of within that area, there's quite an interesting location growing in Stevenage around GSK's campus in terms of cell and gene therapy particularly. And we're seeing some new developments happening there to support that sector. And then other than that, there's a strong cluster in Manchester around the Oxford Road, alongside the universities and the hospital there, and some floor space has been brought forward in terms of laboratory space there, and further is planned. And then probably I'd then go to somewhere like Edinburgh or Glasgow, again, locations where there is strong research base, where there has been strong public sector support, and where there is a sort of burgeoning SME sector that is growing and building around these clusters of leading hospitals and leading academia.
That's great, thanks very much. I'll just quickly whiz onto the chat session here. Sarah Mason's raised a question. With sustainability being at the forefront of all our minds, how do you approach this vision of highly efficient buildings and the aspiration for net carbon zero?
I assume that, is that one for me? I assume that it is. You do want to take it, John. I can give you my perspective. So we're actually, when we do our design, and most of what I've showed you today is actually done by Gensler, and Sarah probably remembers a lot of the same team that did the Illumina Center. So we're looking to try and make the buildings as efficient as possible. The higher you go up, the taller you build, the less efficient the building becomes from a life science perspective because of the ducting and the shaft work. For net carbon zero, from a constructability standpoint, it's almost a requirement now that the tenants in the market and because the end users, they want green efficient buildings. The challenges that we really face is when the buildings operate and when they're kind of on a day-to-day basis, because they are energy hogs and they use a lot of energy and a lot of so there are ways, and we're, it's almost have to have a true partnership when you're looking at it with occupiers to try and offset those costs. And then there's a lot of new technologies out there that actually will lower the your energy usage. It's something that we talk about and try and grapple with every day, and it is going to be a challenge for the sector because of the safety requirements that are necessary for lab buildings.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think for laboratory buildings in particular, with the amount of mechanical and electrical plant and indeed moves towards laboratory automation, these are energy hungry buildings. Excuse me, that it means it is very difficult to move towards those areas, but we absolutely see occupiers across the whole range of R&D sectors getting more and more interested in sustainability and in the green credentials of the building, because the people that they want to attract and to work for them absolutely see it as an important priority. So yeah, it's an area that across different disciplines, all developers and all investors will need to be focusing more and more on.
Great, thanks, John and Doug. Doug, I've got one for you. I mean, looking at the Fenway Centre in particular, it's a scale that probably hasn't been even considered yet over in the UK. And as you mentioned, the net to gross efficiency, the higher you get, the harder it is. So I was just going to say, how do you make that work commercially?
Yeah, so so when you break it down, you take back to its fundamental. The measurement standard in the U.S. is a group called BOMA, right? So Building Operation Maintenance Association. So it's very similar to RICS. And then when the sector kind of first began, no one knew where a lab building should fit. It's not an office, it's not a shed, but they just threw it into sheds. So the original measurement standard was done per an industrial unit, which is essentially to the GIA, which is what you kind of get for a single tenant building in Cambridge. When the Center for Life Science Boston was built, and that was designed and built by a group called Line Properties, they changed the measurement standard and how that building is measured, because financially it wouldn't work. You wouldn't get the financing. It just wouldn't work. there's no way that anyone would ever fund that on an NIA to GIA, because it's not an efficient building in any sense of the word. You know, that building has a GIA essentially of 704,000 square feet. The NIA is about 500. So there's 200,000 square feet that's lost. But what David Clem and Lime did actually was to define it themselves. And so now everyone pays a pro rata share of the mechanical space. Everyone, you know, if a tenant on the second floor, they pay for the shaft space that runs through every floor up to the mechanical room to ventilate. So that is part of their rent. They pay for that. So they were the first ones to kind of set that. Then when Biomed came into the market in 2004, 2005, and Alexandria began to grow, they wrote their own measurement standards, which is based on that, but very similar. And that is kind of the way forward. We've now drafted our own measurement standards for that same purpose. So we don't use BOMA, we use our own. But when you have a market of 30 million square feet with another 18 coming to market in the next 5 to 10 years, you can kind of get away with that. So I think the UK and RICS needs to have a hard think about how it's going to work. Because you won't get that scale because it won't work. You won't, you know, any developer won't, unless it's an institution. And you look at the Crick, right? And that's 1 million square feet, and it's one of the most inefficient buildings from a developer perspective that I've ever seen. But it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I think it's amazing. But no developer would ever build that building because the atriums are just so massive. And your net to gross is probably tremendous. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's tremendous. So that's kind of that's how you get away with it, and how I'd like to see that measurement standard get adjusted and tweaked, because then you'll see 5, 6, 7-story lab buildings coming to Cambridge and Oxford and to London and Manchester and places like that.
Yeah, I think that. RICS have obviously moved towards the international property measurement standard for offices, but there isn't an equivalent for laboratory space. And actually in Cambridge, which is arguably the most developed market in the UK in terms of laboratory floor space that's been delivered
in Europe. I would say in Europe, it's 4 million square feet. There's nothing like it in Europe.
Yeah, so we have built an understanding across a range of professional practices as to how to analyze and understand deals that are struck on those sort of buildings, but it's by no means reached the point where there is a sort of set agreed basis for analyzing these transactions. And I mentioned earlier how we're seeing a lot of new investors coming to the sector, and one of the things they're really keen to understand is how on earth do we compare one transaction with another, so that we can, in the same way when we're investing in retail warehouses or sheds or office space, we can really get our heads around the nature of transactions that are happening in the market. And I think we've still got a way to go to develop that sort of structure to help investors then come in and come into the sector.
Yeah, it's been a discussion Doug and I have been having for over a few evenings.
A long time.
I've got another one here from John Blair. Can Cambridge UK deal with infrastructure expansion that's required to compete in this sector worldwide?
That's a question.
It is a question.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the city authorities and the mayor have recognised that for Cambridge to continue to grow, it's a small city, which is a benefit. It's only about 4 or 5 miles across, but for it to really grow and achieve its full potential, we need to be investing in infrastructure to connect some of these innovation districts together, and to enable people to be able to find somewhere to live and get into work relatively easily. And the metro system will be a great system to come forward. It's just the amount of time it will take to get there. But steps like Network Rail now really progressing the Cambridge South station, and the East-West Rail system being receiving further funding to deliver, means that it might take us a few years, but I think there is significant recognition at a national level that we need to be investing in infrastructure in Cambridge to really make the most of the fantastic assets that we've got in the city.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think when you look at life science, it has been the beacon for central government now for at least the last 2 years, and Cambridge and Oxford kind of at the forefront of that. And so there is a big push to improve infrastructure. I would say the one thing that sometimes doesn't get discussed too much is the grid, the electrical grid, and the amount of demand. We talked about net zero and operating these buildings. That's my biggest concern. I think, I think people will come up with creative solutions on the metro and then the travel point of view. But if you don't, I think the biggest risk that's not really discussed is really, can the grid handle it? That's the one thing that keeps me awake at night. I think everything else, I think there's savvy enough developers and good enough builders, that are top notch. But if the building blocks, i.e. the grid, can't handle it, then we're in for some trouble, potentially. Hopefully not.
Brilliant, thanks both. We've got quite a few other questions actually that have been coming in while we've been answering a few others. Andy Moffat here has said, do you expect COVID to have a different effect on the need for laboratory and office spaces?
Go on, Doug, you go first.
I was going to say, well, so using Boston as a case study, Boston right now has, in the office sector, has 3 million square feet of sublease space. So that's space, available from tenants and occupiers, not direct from landlords. So you layer that on top of what's also available from landlords. It's numbers we haven't seen since the IT and tech bubble since the early 2000s, late 90s. So that's very concerning for the local economy here. But the life sciences actually has gone from strength to strength on this, which is why you're seeing 18 million square feet of supply coming onto the market over the next 5 to 10 years. So I think what COVID has really done has shed a light on the need for more research, particularly as to the future pandemics and what could happen next. And so I think I just think there's only going to be more capital, more interest to make sure that we don't have to live this nightmare again, and then we get on our front foot and we can and knock it back when it comes forward. So I haven't seen any stop in capital, which I don't think there'll be any. I think the demand for space is still going to continue to grow.
Yeah, certainly what we're seeing is companies needing laboratory space continuing to acquire space throughout 2020 when some of the office requirements were put on hold. And that's right across the country. I was talking to someone who works for the company that acquired AstraZeneca's old site up near Manchester. And she was saying that there was absolutely growing demand for laboratory space throughout 2020. You need, it's not something you can do from home. You need to be in the laboratory space to do it, and companies are getting more funding to enable them to grow their activity, and so are needing more floor space. I think in terms of office space, companies are undoubtedly evaluating how they occupy their space, and with potentially some more home working than they had before, whether they need the same amount of space. But as per the remarks that you made at the beginning, Alison, I can't wait to get back to the office. I think that people are finding that working at home is good in parts, but is actually quite challenging in terms of communication. And I'm sure businesses will see that they will want to, when it's safe to do so, get people back into the office and see that collaboration taking place, in the way that it used to.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, John. I'm totally on board with your comments on that front. Yeah, especially the younger members of the team. That social side of what they do as well is absolutely key, and that needs to kind of be in a collaborative space like some of the great ones that are being developed in Cambridge at the moment. I'm just mindful of time. This one's from Alexander Gialis for John and/or Doug. Could you summarise the benefits of spatial proximity between different institutions, i.e. how is collaboration and cross-fertilisation manifested spatially? Is it chance encounters in communal areas, proximity to each other's meeting spaces, or simply efficiency in shared services and utilities?
Again, what we pick up is that by being in relatively close proximity, there is greater opportunity for chance meetings, yes, but particularly there is an opportunity to build trust. It's easier to get together more regularly and sometimes more informally, and that building of trust enables partners in different organizations, whether it's academic and commercial or commercial and commercial, to then work more easily together. And people are voting with their feet, and companies are voting with their feet in terms of where they then choose to be. So that's why these locations where you can attend networking events in the evening, or find amenities that you might bump into people, or be alongside partners, those locations are seeing the most demand. Whereas if you are near to, and by near I mean a few miles away, but you can't then access space within, say, a sort of 10 or 20 minute journey time, those locations are less to the fore. And I think it's all around that trust piece.
Yeah, and to build upon that, I mean, when Pascal Sorier, was out, 2012, 2013, when he just took the job at AZ, and he toured, his goal was to tour all of the different key research sites. And when he got to Cambridge, it was that kind of networking that really kind of blew him away, and the collaboration that really blew him away when he came to visit. And then when he went to the site, the Edinburgh site, I mean, it was, this is where we need to be. The MRC is right there, the hospital's right there, the med school's right there. This is where we need to be, go make it happen. So he wanted to be as close as possible and to have those researchers, be able to work in multiple buildings. You can, you can have a part-time person working for AZ who's also doing research off the MRC and doing other, and working in the hospital at the same time. That bench to bedside is really important. So yeah, I think to be as close as possible is really the kind of the fundamental driver. So I do agree.
Yeah, it goes back to those location slides, John, that you were showing in terms of what the top 5 kind of important factors are. Speaking of AstraZeneca, I think we'll finish on this question, slightly sensitive one, and it's an interesting one to debate, I guess, is from Margaret Reynolds. What's being done to prevent construction and contract delays like the AstraZeneca HQ? I've got my answer on that one, but I mean,
you go first, Alison.
Sorry,
you go first.
I think just to pick up on what Doug was saying, though, that one, Pascal said it's got to happen, and sure enough, he's moved a hell of a lot of people into Cambridge, while we're waiting for that facility to be completed. I mean, my view is really understand the market and make sure you've got some good advice in terms of the likely successes and failures of the appropriate form of procurement in a nutshell. So there's a number of reasons. I think it's not just about the size of that facility. It is groundbreaking. It's going to be a fantastic facility once occupied, but it was done very, very quickly, and it was done at a rate of knots, and of a scale that I think we probably won't be seeing in Cambridge anytime in the near future. And again, I think regardless of the overruns, etc., once it's actually finished, it's going to be a fantastic facility, and one that the whole of Cambridge will benefit from. But yeah, get your procurement strategy right from the start. But that's my take.
Well, I would say outside of Cambridge, no one really knows about what's going on with the headquarters building. They've been so successful running their business and what they do that it rarely hits the press, and it hasn't affected their stock price one bit, despite the overruns and the cost overruns and the delays. I also would say that AstraZeneca, they're not developers, they're not builders, they're scientists, and they focus on improving the human condition. So it was a little bit beyond their skill set. Not to say they don't have the staff and team to do it, but I think when it's not your core competency, it becomes challenging. And you go to your point, Alison, about the speed and the size and the scale. I'm not surprised that they did have some challenges the way that they did. When you look at as to kind of how they set up the project and how they run it. You know, I know a lot of the team over there, and they're very impressive professionals, but you know, when it's not your core competency and it's not what your company's about, you're going to have some issues. Without going into too much depth, but you know, again, on an international scale, no one knows. I mean, it's not, no one talks about it. It's, you know, and over here, no, it's not even a thing because they've been so successful in other parts of their business.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just mindful of time, and we're actually just gone slightly over the hour slot. I think you know, the comments that we've had through, and again, Chris Chapman's just mentioned it's been a great presentation and discussion. I think, Doug, you know, looking forward to seeing you over in Cambridge, UK. You know,
we're coming. I promise.
You're clearly doing some great things over in the US, and that's an interesting one in terms of, you know, that's the UK generally tries to kind of feed off all the great stuff that's happened over there. So well done to IQHQ and all the work that's happening over there. And John, you know, great set of slides again, you know, really focusing out on the market and kind of key trends that we've got going on in the science and R&D arena generally, and really great to sort of get your insights on that as well. So I think without further ado, if I may just say thank you again very much to both of you, and for everybody to have a really great afternoon. If you've got any other queries, I'm sure John and Doug would be more than happy to discuss them separately outside of this session. I'm sure if drop us a note, and we'll do what we can to make sure that that those questions get responded to. So, but thanks ever so much, everybody.
Thanks.